Hey there, this is Woo, and today I'm going to be doing a nice little deck tech about one of my favorite decks in Star Wars Unlimited. It's a Chirrut Red Force Enabling deck, highlighted by this card, Force Throw. So why are we building around this card? Well, this is, I think, one of the strongest cards currently in Star Wars Unlimited. It costs 1. It's a removal and a discard spell event kind of mixed up in one. And it's such a huge tempo gain when you can pull this off, when you can kill a unit and make your opponent discard a card for 1 cost while still kind of deploying the rest of your units that turn or doing another event that destroys a unit. There's so much that this card can do. It's got so much utility. You can target yourself with it to discard expensive cards to like snag leaders when they deploy. For instance, you're playing against a Boba Fett. They deploy their Boba Fett unit. Leader has 7 health. You pay 1 with this. You target yourself, discard a Luke, and one-shot their Boba leader. Okay. There's huge plays you can make with this, but it's got a deck building cost, and that is that you need to be playing Force units. So we need to figure out how to enable that. And in my opinion, the best way to enable that is with Chirrut. Chirrut is the cheapest Force leader in the game, costs 5. And he's also invincible when he comes into play. So, when you got this guy, you're going to be able to play your Force payoff cards, highlighted by Force Throw. There's a few others we're going to talk about. It just gives you a very safe way to enable that card. Why is he better than some of the other ones? Well, in Hero, there's Luke Skywalker, also a pretty powerful leader. Unfortunately, Luke costs 1 more. And the difference between 5 and 6 in this game is pretty big. We'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the matchups specifically, because of 2 of the best decks, in my opinion, in the game are Sabine and Boba Fett. Sabine deploys at 4, Boba Fett deploys at 5. I have found that Luke is just too slow to keep up with those decks in a consistent way. Chirrut comes down earlier. He's very safe when he deploys. So I find it stronger. As far as when you compare him to some of the villains that have Force trait, and they're all even more expensive, right? You got Inquisitor at 6, Vader at 7, Emperor at 8. On top of that, the Force villain units are less plentiful, and in my opinion less powerful than what you get in the Hero aspect. Hero, you get Yoda, he costs 3, it's a very cheap unit. Now that does exist in villain with 5th brother, but after that you have to wait until 5 with 7th sister. Heroes also get Kanan, they get Obi-Wan, they get Luke. I find the blue Hero package of units much more sustainable. Alright, so here's the deck list. We're gonna kind of delve into different parts of this deck now, piece by piece, and talk about why I've included some of the cards. And then we'll get into the matchups. Specifically, we'll talk about the big 3 matchups, in my opinion, which involve Sabine, Boba Fett, and Iden. Alright, let's start with the payoffs. We talked about Force Throw a ton. It is the best card in this deck. You never resource this card. It is kind of the glue. It's what lets your Chirrut turn, the turn you deploy him. He's cheap, he comes out early. It lets you double card, sometimes even triple card on that turn. You play a Force Throw, you play a unit, you play an It Binds All Things. You play a Force Throw, you play a Jedi Lightsaber in the same turn. It's what we get. I call that turn the swing turn. It's the same thing Boba Fett does on his deploy turn. He creates this giant amount of resources, he plays multiple units, and you kind of try to run over the rest of the game because of that turn. Chirrut is doing the same thing. He comes out early, you pump him up, you use a Force Throw, you kill something, you make your opponent discard a card, you're off to the races. Talk about the next card here. It binds all things. Up until Chirrut was revealed, I didn't really like this card. I thought it was way too situational. Chirrut is a different story because he cannot die the turn he on the turn that he takes lethal damage. So he enables this card in a very clean way. Its upside is capped. I mean, I'm often most happy using it to destroy an A-wing on the opponent's space arena, finish off a damaged unit. It's really interesting, the kind of dynamic it presents to your opponent, because, okay, they can deal 5 to Chirrut that turn, but now they have to worry that you can heal Chirrut even after they've dealt what it would be lethal damage to them. So it binds all things, is strong, it's situational. There's 2 copies here. I think the situational part of it is why I haven't included the full 3, but it's a strong card, good inclusion. Jedi Lightsaber is probably the second most important card here. It's another card I would very rarely ever recommend resourcing. Putting this on Chirrut makes him a 6/8 that also shrinks whatever he's attacking by 2, which means he can one-shot a Darth Vader with this card. Can one-shot all the popular leaders like Boba Fett, Han Solo, Sabine. Anything can get one-shot by this. It ups his health, right? So again, similar to It Binds All Things, he takes lethal damage. You put this on him, he's all of a sudden past that 5. He's going to survive until next turn now. And every time Chirrut survives into a next turn means 1 more use out of him, because he cannot die once that new turn starts until the end of that turn. So you kind of chain this in a way that puts your opponent in a really awkward situation. Jedi Lightsaber can also just go on other units. There are times you want to do that. Be careful when you're playing against yellow, because if they bounce whatever you play it on, it's a pretty big blowout. But there's times you even just put this on your 2-drop unit and you just kind of like try to aggro. There are situations where that can be beneficial. All right, the last part of the Force payoff is the Force is with me. It's strong. It's expensive, so its best pairing is on the Chirrut turn with a Force throw. You play both cards, 4+1. Force is with me is really nifty because it action cheats, right? So you're playing a card and getting an attack at the same time. It helps you maintain priority going into the next turn. It's aggressive, so you get a pump, you get a shield. So if you are the aggressor in the matchup, often you just want to attack base with it, because now you've got a shield. Now they have to react to whatever you've been doing. If you're defensive, well, you can kind of use it as a removal. You attack into a unit. You do lose your shield, but you've left behind a powerful unit. It's pumped, it's got more experience, it's hanging around. Note that you don't have to put this on a Force unit, you just have to have a Force unit in play to get the shield. So, you got a Chirrut, but they don't have a space presence. You put this on your A-Wing or something, you hit your opponent for 5, then you got a flying A-Wing 3/5 with a shield on it. Very powerful. So often, this is not actually going on Chirrut himself, or even on the Yoda or a Kanan. It's often it does. Don't get me wrong, but it's versatile. It is expensive though, so it often takes up your whole turn. You want to really time this card. All right, those were I wanted to talk about those the most. We're going to just briefly touch on these units. Yoda, Kanan, Obi-Wan, and Luke. These are your Force units. I think most important here is the cheap ones, Yoda and Kanan, because they're really what are enabling those Force throws, those It Binds, those Forces with me early in the game. And that early in the game part is how you bridge into these big units like Obi-Wan and Luke. Yoda is an incredibly important card in this deck. He's also incredibly vulnerable. We're going to talk about him a lot in the matchups, because Yoda's not the kind of card you just often want to jam on the second turn. If he gets removed without getting any value, it can be devastating. He's vulnerable to ambushes, so we'll get a little more on him later. Kanan, on the other hand, is probably my favorite turn 3 play. It's hard for him to not trade for equal value. There's not much that just kills him on that turn except a takedown, but you'll live with that. That's a even trade. Your big units, Obi-Wan and Luke, are kind of how you bridge into the end game. If you're ahead and you can get these guys out, you're gonna win. Luke is one of the most powerful cards in the game at that cost, and he stabilizes you. Obi-Wan's a fantastic follow-up to the Chirrut turn, so there's some power there for sure. All right, now we're gonna cover the core unit package in this deck. So these are mostly aggressive units. In certain matchups, you will be the aggressor, and in certain matchups against Sabine and sometimes against Boba Fett, you're going to be the control. But these cards can often pull double duty, like Restored Arc. is got healing. A-Wing is good at killing other A-Wings. Sabine Wren can mostly trade into other 2-drops. I've included one Rebel Pathfinder here only because I want a 10th turn 1 play, and I found that he's probably the one I want the most in that slot. And then Fleet Lieutenant and Wing Leader are your most the cards I want to play most on the second turn of the game. So Fleet Lieutenant is safer. You can do trade ups with it, like if they have a 3 health space unit, your Restored R can kill it now. Your Rebel Pathfinder can kill a Battlefield Marine, for instance. If you're the aggressor in the matchup, you're just going face with this card. You're action cheating with it, so you're getting to attack with the unit you play on the first turn. You're leaving behind a body, and then you're also more likely to be maintaining initiative into the next turn. Wing Leader is your high upside play, but it is prone to some blowouts, especially against bounce, like Waylay or targeted removal. But it's my favorite card to play on the second turn against Boba Fett, because I want Boba Fett to be playing defense against me in the first few turns, because it kind of keeps him from snowballing. So Wing Leader, Fleet Lieutenant, you got to pick your choice, your moments with these cards. Fleet Lieutenant is a much safer play. It is the better card. Wing Leader puts your opponent, though, on the back foot sometimes, which is what you want, because if you can bridge into your Chirrut turn while they're on the back foot, they're in a world of hurt. And then you're dropping Obi-Wans and Lukes following that. That's kind of how you take over a game. So that's why Wing Leader's here. It's to kind of put your opponent in a little bit of a check situation. K2 is the last unit here. It is a very aggressive card. I've only included 2 copies of it because I actually think it's kind of weak into a couple of the popular matchups. Again, I keep saying these names, Sabine and Boba Fett. It doesn't line up particularly well against them often. The 4 health there means that it gets ambushed out by a card like Bosk, which isn't 3 of in every Boba deck. Since you are not the aggro player in the Sabine matchup, you are basically never playing this card. It's just too slow. It doesn't get there. It is very good against control decks. The discard, I love using the discard effect on this most of the time, unless I'm really hard aggroing my opponent. And it works really well with Force Throw, because if you can get a double discard in one turn, that can sometimes be really powerful. All right. The interaction. So other than the Force interaction, like the Force Throw, they bind sell things, we've got 2 copies of each of these cards: Make an Opening, Open Fire, and Takedown. In the sideboard, I've got a few, like the 3rd copy of the Open Fire and Takedown. The reason we don't go full on any of these is because different matchups, different power. Make an Opening, very good against Boba Fett. They have 7th Fleet Defender and Crafty Smuggler. It cleanly answers both of those because they have a shield. It's okay against Sabine. I know it says it heals you. It doesn't really kill any of their units effectively, though. So it's not something I cut against them, but it's also not amazing. Open Fire, on the other hand, is the best card against Sabine. Often you're even gonna just skip the first turn and kill whatever they played with it. You got the 3rd copy in the sideboard specifically for the Sabine matchup. It's kind of a card that's not ever really awful, but it's not great against most other decks. It doesn't really kill anything cleanly against Boba Fett. Against control decks, you often want to be the one presenting threats, not reacting to them. So, they could come out in some matchups. They're never going to be awful, so you just really want them against Sabine. The best card there. Takedown, similar, right? Good against aggro. Also never really awful, but you want to be the aggressor in a lot of matchups, and Takedown is situational too. It's not somehow it's also not that great against Boba Fett, but it's very good against Iden, for instance. It can kill her instantly. So it is a card that I want access to. The entire playset is available in the 60 cards that I've presented. It's just I think in the main deck we want to kind of hedge a little bit. So we've got 2 loves. We'll clean up our deck in post-board games a little bit, depending on our matchups. These are the last 3 cards. We got 1 System Patrol Craft. There's another one in the sideboard. Very good card against Boba Fett again, because it blocks up against their 7th Fleet Defenders. and it buys you time with the Fet's Fire Spray, which is really the key part here. That's kind of what takes you out. It's a card I would consider even like bumping another K2 of, and like cut a K2 from the main deck, put another System Patrol Craft in there. It could be useful, especially if you're playing against a ton of Boba Fett's. Redemption, you know, I want more big cards for the Force Throw. So Force Throw, target yourself, destroy like a big leader. I don't want the 3 Luke Skywalkers to be the only card that can do that. Redemption has the upside here, where if you ever make it to this turn against like Sabine, you're probably just instantly going to win. You're going to heal 8. It's pretty good against Boba Fett too if it gets to that point, because it blocks Fett's Fire Spray. So it's a pretty good card. I'm happy with Redemption. I think it has enough utility, especially with the Force Throw stuff, that you want some big cards there. And here is the sideboard. We talked about a few of these things, like the extra Open Fire and Takedown. We got the extra System Patrol Craft as well for Boba Fett. 1 Vanquish, also primarily for Boba Fett, but I'd also bring that in against like some control decks that play big ships. And then we've got 3 Devotion, entirely for Sabine, and 3 Force Surrender, which is entirely playing against like Iden or Darth Vader. Just a deck that's going really big and usually not, and you're going to be the aggressor there. If you can like the turn after deploying Chirrut, if they're on the back foot already, you can get some damage in and then make them pitch 2 of their last 3 cards or something, draw 2. You're going to be in great shape there. So that's what the Force Surrenders are for. All right, we've touched about a lot of this already, but just going to quickly get a little more information here. So these are what I would consider the 3 best decks right now. They all run Energy Conversion Lab, which is important because that's kind of why we have Tarkin Town. Tarkin Town is a clean answer to whatever they Energy Conversion Lab. So we kind of got that covered, but we need to be very aware of what they could be using Energy Conversion Lab, because we can get blown out in some situations. So against Boba Fett, 2 things can happen in this matchup. It's probably the most difficult matchup to navigate, because we're not exactly sure who's going to be the aggro player and who's going to be the control player coming into it. And it's going to depend very much on what happens in the first couple turns. Ideally for us, we can be the aggro. If we can make Boba Fett react, we're going to be in a much better shape. If Boba Fett is the aggressor and goes through his whole Boba turn where he flips, he brings out a 5-drop, maybe he also brings out a 3-drop, and he's ahead on life, we're in a world of hurt, because we now need to react to everything he's played, and then that's when Fett's Fire Spray comes down, hits us, and we're just like, we're just done at that point. The best things that you can be doing against Boba Fett early are Wing Leader, number 1, into whatever you played on the first turn. Even if it gets waylaid, it's really not that big a deal. If they're waylaying you instead of ramping or instead of deploying units, you are happy. You actually want this game to go a little longer, because they cannot like mess with your Lukes once those come into play. If you're getting Lukes down when you're at even parity, if your health pool is stable, you will win that game. So we want to be the aggro. What we don't want to do is play a Yoda into them ramping, and then Yoda gets one shot by Bosk, and then we go home crying. Real bad for us. So Fleet Lieutenant, Wing Leader. That's kind of what we want to do. We want to go face. We want to make them react to us. There's a few things that are really difficult for us to interact with. Boba Fett unit is one of them, because open fires don't kill it. Takedown, not a great trade for us. Even if we like forces with me onto a Yoda, it doesn't even kill the Boba Fett. So he's tricky. That's why he's like one of the most expensive cards in the game. It's clearly pushed, very powerful. We want, ideally, to be able to do a huge Chirrut turn to swing their Boba turn. That involves Force Throw, that involves Jedi Lightsaber, that involves Takedown, if, for instance, Boba needed to clear one of our units the previous turn. And that's why it's so important that we try to be the aggressor in this matchup. If we can get into Obi-Wan with a stable life pool, we're going to be good, even if they ramped. Obi-Wan is a very good card against Darth Vader, for instance. It can't be killed by it. So our top end is better. Fet's Fire Spray is the big deal. That card is really hard for Chirrut Red to interact with, and we can use Force Throw, discard a card, kill it. That's often more important even than doing it to Boba Fett. Like if you have a choice to like one-shot their Boba Fett leader with a Force Throw, you know, if your like ground game is looking okay, which it often will, like you get a Chirrut, you got a Jedi lightsaber, like okay, maybe let Boba hit you once or twice, take your 8 damage, kill the Boba Fett with your Chirrut, save that Force Throw for the Fet's Fire Spray, and like discard your Obi-Wan and kill the Fet's Fire Spray. That's the card that beats us. If that card wasn't in the deck, I actually would say Chirrut is favored against Boba Fett. That card is there though, so keep in the back of your mind at all times. All right, Sabine. Best aggro deck in the game right now. We are the control 100% of the time. Never try to race a Sabine. They will beat you. What we want to do, we want to trade our units early. Okay, that Fleet Lieutenant is our favorite card here because we can like trade and get another 3/3 into play. Open Fire is a fantastic card here. If we're going first, we want to almost always just play our 2-drop. Next turn, Open Fire whatever they played on the first turn. If they're going first though, and they play an A-Wing for instance, and you have a 2-drop and an Open Fire in your hand, in my opinion, you are required to take initiative without playing a card, because if they play Wing Leader onto that A-Wing, you lose the game most likely. It will hit you for 5 that turn. It might hit you for 5 the next turn too. You could take down it, but you would have to then like claim without playing your 2-drop. It's a big problem. So that's kind of where we're at with the Open Fire. If you're going second, it's okay. Just don't play a card on the first turn. All right, now the Yoda speech I promised you. Yoda is both like the best and worst card you have in this matchup. If you can get Yoda into play and he survives into you being able to either suit him up or use the forces with me, I guess that also means suit him up, like Jedi lightsaber, forces with me, you're going to be in great shape. He's going to heal you for 2 every turn. He's going to kill a unit they play every turn. The problem with Yoda is Energy Conversion Lab. They have 2 cards that can one-shot him, one at even cost Echo-based Defender, the 4/3 Sentinel, and then one at 1 more cost, K2 Essa. So it's hard to just be like, all right, turn 2, play Yoda, and pray that they don't ambush it. And it's often incorrect to do that. If it's the only card you can play, you got to do it and cross your fingers. But if you can play Fleet Lieutenant or an Open Fire, it's more important. Notice I'm not mentioning Wing Leader. I think Wing Leader is way too slow in this matchup. It's not a card you really want to be playing. I mean, if you have to, you have to. But it's very slow against Sabine and doesn't often do what you need it to do. Another really good card here, obviously, is Kanan. He also restores. He also suffers from an ambush problem, although there's only 1 card in the deck that Sabine runs right now that cleanly kills him, and that's Steadfast Battalion. Now, if they Steadfast Battalion into a Kanan, it's kind of okay. You kill it with the Tarkin Town that you have. Live to fight another day. So in this matchup, your best cards, we talked about it, Open Fire, Force Throw is obviously another one. They have a lot of cheap cards in their deck though, so it's often correct to Force Throw yourself. This matchup is not about card quantity, so you will often end up with cards in your hand at the end of the game against Sabine, so don't be afraid of just targeting yourself with a Force Throw and killing an A-Wing or something. It's fine. You just want to kill their things so that you can stick one of these restoring units like a Yoda or a Kanan, or get to the turn where you play Luke. If you play Luke and the game doesn't end that turn, you win. He's going to restore 3. They can't come back from that. So it's a tough matchup. I have found it very beatable, but it requires some very tight game. And the last meta matchup here is Iden. This is the best control deck, and everything we've learned in the matchup with Boba and Sabine is kind of thrown out the window a little bit here. You are the aggro here 100%, and you need to be concerned about 2 cards specifically. They are Power of the Dark Side and Takedown. Takedown one-shots your leader, Chirrut, right? You cannot deploy Chirrut into open 4 resources on the Iden side. You also can't deploy him if he's the only unit you're going to be deploying because of Power of the Dark Side. Good news for you, you've got a lot of cheap units. You got things like Wing Leader, which is fantastic into this deck. You want to, like, Yoda's another really good card here. They don't have very many clean answers into him. The card advantage he gives you when he dies is great. You can suit him up with either Forces with Me or Jedi Lightsaber as well. It crosses that 5 health threshold, which then means he can't be taken down. Just always be worried about if it's the only unit you have in play, you don't really want to be suiting anything up because, again, Power of the Dark Side, huge blowout. Also keep in mind, if you ever see Traitorous, if you see them play that card, you're never allowed to suit up your Yoda anymore. Just wait. It's fine, not a big deal. You also have Takedown, which is good news. You can one-shot their Iden, so they have to be careful about that as well. Your units line up pretty well against what they do early game. Like, your units are stronger than their early game. You have the Forces with Me giving a shield is incredibly powerful because of Overwhelming Barrage. Chirrut is very strong here as long as you don't let him get one shot, because they don't have that many units that deal like huge burst damage. You just have to be wary of thresholds with this deck. Takedown, Count Dooku later in the game can kill something instantly that has 4 less life. But if you're ahead again, which you almost certainly will be, and you can force them into situations where they have to react aggressively with their energy against you, and then you can just like double unit or play a Luke, you're going to be in okay shape here. It's just, it requires some practice to figure out like lines that you can take. You often just don't deploy your leader on the turn that you can with this, or you try to create situations where you have as many actions you can take at once to force them to either spend energy or just like hold up their 4 for takedown. And then, you know, if they pass, you just take initiative. You've spent your energy, it's fine. Like if you played in a Yoda and then like a Rebel Pathfinder on your 5 resources, and they're just sitting there holding 4 resources to try to take down your Chirrut. They pass, you take initiative, you're good. Like you spent 5, you're ahead. It doesn't matter that much that they're trying to stall your leader out. All right, so we talked about those 3 matchups. They're the big 3. They're like what I would focus on. Like I think anytime you're going to be testing out a new deck, that's the gauntlet you kind of want to run through. There's plenty of other videos with like deck techs for those matchups, for those deck lists specifically. You can go on SWDB to look up some deck lists there. I'd recommend trying to find someone to play them against who's had some practice with. There's a public Discord that you can join, people playing there in real life. But those are the decks you want to practice this with. Once you got a handle on that, branch out. There's other good decks in this game. I think there's some good Han decks that you can play against. Those are some really interesting matchups with Chirrut. I think he's pretty good against Han because of all these discard effects like Force Throw and K2. Han tends to run low on card quantity because of this ability. There's if you're comfortable with Sabine, you can try playing in some Leia aggro matchup. It's pretty similar in how it plays out. So if you have practice there, I think that should translate pretty well. You can try playing against some Krennic as well, similar to Iden for the most part. So yeah, I think this deck is incredibly fun. I think Force Throw is such a cool card, such a fun thing to be doing. It's so powerful when it hits. You're gonna just explode with joy whenever you Force Throw your opponent's last card and it's like a Darth Vader and you use it to kill their leader or something, and it's just like, wow, they might as well just take their cards and go home at that point. Yeah, I think if you are interested in picking up a deck, this is I think a really cool one. It only plays 3 legendaries, so I think it also could be something you can consider making in the real world. It's not it shouldn't be too expensive outside of the Luke Skywalkers. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. I'd really appreciate if you like the video, subscribe to this channel. It's pretty new for me. I haven't made a lot of videos. I'm going to post a link to the actual deck list on SWDB in the comments. So feel free to check it out there. If you want to leave any comments about like tweaks you'd make or things that you have any questions about, I'm game to listen. I'm also pretty active on the Star Wars Unlimited Discord, the username Woo, W with 5 O's. So you can hit me up there if you're a part of that community. And yeah, I think if you made it through this video, yeah, like I said, I'd appreciate a like and subscribe, and hope to be putting out some more content soon. Take care.